The biggest passion in my life is fishing. I mostly bass fish recreationally, but occasionally I like to explore other options. I was born in 1998 when the fishing industry was vastly different in many ways. The tournament styles were different. Recreational fishing was very different, as well as the vast changes in the amount of money that this industry harbors. Today, we will dive into the specific industry of bass fishing. The deep-sea fishing industry has changed vastly, but there is not enough time in a day to explain that thoroughly. In the United States, there are two main types of bass. Both largemouth and smallmouth bass can be found in 49 of the 50 states. Alaska is the only state in the Union that does not have any amount of bass. That being said, there is a ton of market space in the lower 48 to make millions of dollars in the industry. The first aspect of bass fishing that we need to address is the big change in equipment from 1998 to 2018. The amount of brands and types of equipment have dramatically changed in 20 years. To start, people saw the amount of money that could be made in this market and flooded it. This caused tons of different brands to be formed to provide goods and services to anglers. It is very hard to put a number on the exact amount of companies at the time because the size of the companies varied. However, there were a couple brands that dominated the market in the late 90s. Strike King, Quantum, Zebco, Yum, and Zoom are some that controlled the mainstream bass fishing market. This is because, at the time, if a company had the size and money, it was very hard for a small company to get their name out there. This was a phenomenon that was mirrored by GM, Ford, and Chrysler, who controlled the automotive market at the time. The type of equipment used is also a difference that can be found in 1998. This is the Zebco 33. This was the most popular rod and reel combo in the late 90s. It is because it is so easy to use. All you have to do is push this button and cast. This is even what my dad taught me to fish with in the early 2000s. The industry took huge measures to change the equipment market over the next 20 years. In recent years, the equipment has vastly changed from the late 90s. Equipment is much more advanced now than it was in the past. There are also a ton more brands that are in the mainstream eye right now. With the outbreak of social media, it is easier than ever to start a company and do very well. In today's store, you will find the old and huge companies like Quantum and Strike King that do very well with consumers. However, there are companies that are coming up and hurting these big corporations more and more by the year. There is Abu Garcia, 13 Fishing, Johnny Morris, Daiwa, Shimano, and countless others. The lure industry also took massive strides forward in regards to the evolution of techniques and baits. A pretty interesting advancement that hit the lure world was the use of lures that are so out there and bizarre, no one would ever think to use something like this 20 years ago. For example, there is a lure company called Savage Gear that is entirely based on outlandish lures. Generally, lures are either worms or crawfish or something similar. Savage Gear makes lures like ducks, bats, other fish, and even turtles. Newer lures and baits are being invented and made every single day. Although the difference in equipment in this 20-year period is quite vast, the amount of money going through the industry is much larger. The main difference between the bass fishing industry in 1998 and in 2018 is the money involved. 1998 was a time where just about anyone could afford to fish recreationally and no one could afford to fish in tournaments. If a person wanted to make a career out of fishing in the 90s, there were really only three main options. 1, you could fish in tournaments professionally. 2, you can try and get a TV show. Or 3, you can take out clients to random lakes and get paid as a guide. Other than these three options, there were not many other options available for you to make a living. Professional anglers either made millions or struggled to make a living at all. There were also a limited number of tournament circuits that you could join. At the time, the biggest and main tournament circuit was the BASS tournament. The competitors would travel the country and make as much money as possible. For most people, the entry fees were too high in order to make a living. The traveling was tough, and an angler needed to invest tens of thousands of dollars just to be able to compete. On the other hand, it was much easier to be a recreational fisherman at the time. There were more lakes than the general public could access. The cost of supplies were much more affordable as well. This same Zebco 33 rod and reel combo is worth about $18 just for the reel, and an additional $15 for the rod. This is very cheap line that only costs about 75 cents to spool up. The tournament scene in today's market is very different from 20 years ago. For example, the BASS circuit is no longer the only tournament series in the nation. There is Major League Fishing and the FLW Tour that harbors millions of dollars every season. This means that there are more professional anglers than ever. However, the entry fees and expenses are still very high to participate in these nationwide events. Recreational fishing is becoming more and more expensive as the time goes on as well. For example, rod and reel prices are going up as new and better technology emerge. The lure companies are also raising prices to match the market. Despite higher prices, more and more people are becoming anglers just for fun. This instills a passion for the typical outdoorsman like myself. This is a 7-foot, 3-inch, medium-heavy Defy 13 fishing rod. I have a Quantum Smoke reel set up on this, along with 45-pound braided line. The reel itself is worth about $170, complemented by about a $60 rod. The line on this reel alone is worth about $35. The statistics show that the fishing industry is having a pretty big impact on the world and United States economies. According to Bassmaster, anglers end up generating $115 billion towards the U.S. economy every single year. This helps create more than 800,000 jobs across the nation. 45 million people fish recreationally every year as well. This is a big chunk of the population that is not even involved with professional angling. This industry creates a bigger wave than most people realize. In the 90s and early 2000s, the only way to really stay in touch with the fishing world was by watching the various shows and tournaments on your TV. The hunting and fishing networks would have TV personalities fishing on random lakes and other bodies of water. This form really wasn't very entertaining. This was more of an educational tool that was brought out to sell a certain product that is a sponsor of the show. 2018 is the complete opposite when it comes to the mediums of which you can watch and absorb the fishing world. There are still TV shows that are available, but they are in the minority of popularity. The biggest stage that fishing has taken on is YouTube. There are thousands of fishing channels that anyone can watch. A popular creator named Robert Turkla estimates that there are over 500 million views on fishing videos every month on YouTube alone. This is a ton of traction that the industry could not get when TV was the only form of viewing. With all of this information, it is clear to see that the bass fishing industry in its various forms have rapidly changed over the 20 years that I have been alive. Everything from the types of equipment to money to the various mediums that this industry is being represented in has changed a lot. There are billions of dollars contributing to the world economy because of this fairly small branch of the outdoor world. More and more is changing by the day, and there is no telling when it will stop.